I've actually been in the chamber.
Yeah. So I believe and you should be good to go.
Okay. Thank you. Again, I'm Yundi Cook. I'm Vice President and General Counsel for the university, but I went to University of Miami. I graduated in 96. So I started in private practice, and then I took the Associate General Counsel job here at UCF. I've now been at UCF almost 23 years, so they just can't seem to get rid of me. And so I've started as a litigator here in my current role. I don't really do any litigation, but we do manage litigation in-house and quite a few other things, but I'll leave it at that.
Hi, my name is Andrew Moses, and as I was introduced, I practice criminal defense work. I started my career at the state attorney's office here with Dr. Fiesta. I was a prosecutor for a little over 3 years and then started doing defense work. My practice ranges from simple misdemeanor traffic offenses to much more serious life type felonies. I went to law school at University of Florida, where I did an internship as a prosecutor there and kind of sparked my interest in criminal defense or criminal law. And I've been doing defense work since 2006. And prior to that, I was a prosecutor for 3 years.
Good evening. My name is Jason Fiesta. I graduated from Stetson Law School. I usually say in the late 1900s, but that's just for funsies. I started my career after law school as an assistant state attorney. I stayed at the office here locally, Orange Osceola, for about 15 years before I joined the faculty here full time. While I was at the state attorney's office, I was an adjunct here. I started working at UCF in 2004. So this is my 21st year working for UCF. I'm in the legal studies department now. I supervise a lot of different organizations, the moot court team, the mock trial team, a few other organizations on campus, also the legislative scholars, which I see a few of us here, a couple alumni. But during the time I was with the state attorney's office, which I'm still there, technically part-time, I've been a domestic violence prosecutor during that time. Probably of the 20 years, I think we're going on 14 of those years. That's what my specialty is in while I've been a prosecutor.
Good evening. So I started at UCF, Go Knights, for undergrad, and I was in the legal studies department. So, welcome. Always nice to be here. I don't think we had classrooms, as beautiful as we do now. But after UCF, I went to UF for law school. My career started as a lawyer in the Air Force. So I went to be a JAG officer. I was active duty for 5 years, where everyone starts off prosecuting cases. So I was in the Air Force when we had a pretty big scandal, the military training instructor scandal down in Lackland in Texas. So got my feet wet, very wet at the time. Several cases that we tried. And then I was also a defense counsel in the Air Force, and then came out of active duty. I still serve in the reserves. So I've been doing that now for 14 years. And after serving in the JAG Corps, I went to the Federal Defender's Office. I had interned there during my second year of law school. Always enjoyed fighting for the underdog. So federal court, federal crimes is what I do. And I've been there for 9 years, and I truly enjoy it. So, thank you.
And good evening. My name is Sidney Calloway. I came to Florida as one of those students who didn't go to college right after I graduated from high school. I was 22 when I came to Florida. Went to Florida Keys Community College, got my 2-year degree there. Picked between FSU and Florida for my undergraduate degree. Chose FSU, don't know why, but I did. And then I went on to law school at Washington University in St. Louis, where I became really enthralled with the idea of criminal law and constitutional law. I knew when I went to Washington University I was going to come back and practice criminal law. So I came down after graduation, started my legal career as a public defender at the Miami-Dade County Public Defender's Office. Stayed there for 4.5 years, tried a bunch of cases, got a lot of experience, as you can imagine. And then went from there to the State Attorney General's office, where I worked under Bob Butterworth for 2.5 years, and got a specialty in eminent domain law. And that was exciting enough that I was lured into private practice at that time, and worked for a couple of law firms before I landed at Schutz & Bowen in 1998. And I've been there for 26, 27 years. I'm board certified in civil trial law. I do land use and zoning. And I've had some experience as an adjunct professor at the University of Miami teaching civil trial skills. And I've also did at least 2 semesters at Florida Memorial teaching as an adjunct, teaching business administration.
Fantastic. So yeah, I'd like to jump straight into questions. This first segment of questions will just be kind of a general overview of law school, of your careers. So feel free to respond to this at your leisure, whatever questions you'd like to answer. And we'll just kind of continue through that. So yeah, I'll start off with our first question. When did you know you wanted to be a lawyer? And this is to the whole panel, so feel free to answer.
I'll start. When I found myself at FSU, I was a junior. I started studying political science, and I realized all of my colleagues were getting ready to graduate like I was, and they were all political science students, and they were headed to law school. So I said, you know what? Sounds like a plan.
So funny. It's very funny that he says that because I'm also a poli-sci major from undergrad, but I was already planning to go to law school when I started undergrad.
I'm the third poli-sci major that went to law school. I think we all probably understand there's not a whole lot else you could do with it other than go to law school.
Right?
So it's a path. I wouldn't say it's like the path to get to law school. I have no idea what all you are doing. It's good in the sense that you learn to read critically. You have a lot of writing to do, which is certainly something you have to do in law school, but it's certainly not the path that you need to do in order to be successful.
My parents were medical professionals, and late in high school, I came to the conclusion that I was not going to be a medical professional. And so I don't think my parents told me, these are your two choices, but for me, it was a binary choice for some reason. I can either be a lawyer or a doctor. I don't know why. Those were my two choices. Actually, there was a third rail that I didn't go very far. I actually considered going into the seminary as well. So it was either law school or seminary, really, because I knew I wasn't going to go the biology route. But so I knew from an early point in my education that I was going to end up going to law school, I think, and that was just because of my experiences in high school with a lot of speech competitions and debate, and so it just seemed like a natural fit for me. And so round peg, round hole. So that's how I ended up in law school. Wasn't much of a surprise for me, I suppose, and I just lucked out. So that I got to do something that I actually enjoyed. It wasn't just I guess I might as well do that kind of a thing. It was actually an intended point of a goal. So luckily, it was something that I really did enjoy.
As a young girl, I was born in Costa Rica, and I lived some time in Haiti as well. And so a lawyer helped our family come to the United States, and I thought that they were the most amazing profession that you could have, and that I could help other people. And so I think from when I was a little girl, I was like, I want to be a lawyer and help people. So that was my idea.
Awesome. So before you started law school, did you know what area of law you wanted to practice? And if not, how did you decide?
I think I knew I wanted to do some sort of litigation. I didn't know that I wanted to do anything that is associated with criminal. I think doing a clinic, probably my trial ad clinic, and the person who was teaching us was the state attorney in Alachua County at the time, Bill Cervone. I think that helped me kind of decide that it's a path that I at least want to explore. And also working at the state attorney's office, doing an internship in law school, kind of solidified that. And it was a great choice. Going out of law school to be a prosecutor at a state attorney's office or anywhere, probably similar to a public defender, you're given a lot of freedom. You're given cases, you're said, okay, go learn, it's time. And it's a very cool experience to do it.
Yeah, I also knew when I was in law school, again, I was enthralled with just criminal law. I had a really nationally renowned criminal law professor, and he kind of taught the whole class, but I took that, and at the time in Miami, it was a very hot spot for drugs and criminal activity. So by the time I graduated law school, and I knew I wanted to come and be a public defender, which I do attribute to, and you just mentioned it, but your ability to stand on your feet, address an argument, respond to something that you've just been presented with, and really that internal thing that it takes to be a lawyer. I found that at the public defender's office in the courtroom, where you have difficult cases, difficult clients, and you've got to make decisions about things that matter, and you've got to be creative. And that I took away, which again is really sort of the foundation, I think, for me being a lawyer today, is what I got from that 4.5 years at the public defender's office.
Yeah, so I'll move into our third question. Do y'all have any general advice for law school applicants?
Applicants?
Or prospective students?
Lawyers
Yeah.
with parsing words.
Prospective students.
And again, you know, we've touched on it, that you don't necessarily have to be a poli-sci. I went to law school, and there were communication majors, there were arts majors, there were business administration people, kids and students who were doing a lot of everything. But the real experience, I would say, is, again, you want to be consistent with getting through that process, and you want to make it your own. You've got to figure out if you want to do it. And if that's your choice, then again, you know, just be prepared for the rigors, but there's amazing promise in this profession. And today we were just talking, some folks, the practice of law is not a business per se. As a lawyer, I call it, it's almost like a calling. It's not for everyone, and what you do in terms of what you are projecting matters to the public, it matters to the larger community, and it matters to your colleagues in terms of how you relate. So the application process, say again, consider it is a pretty serious thing to do what we're calling ourselves as lawyers.
I advise students every day that want to go to law school. You know, the legal studies department, that's probably 90% of our students probably want to go to law school. I don't know what the percentage that actually apply and matriculate, but you know, it's a common question, or you get a set of common questions rather from people who are applying to law school or that want to go to law school. And so, you know, the only advice that I have for you now, just as a general audience, and I'm probably preaching to the choir because you're here listening to us talk, which means you already have an interest in the law, but you should know that in the future, eventually, you know, if you end up going to law school, graduating and applying for your license, you know, your membership into, for example, if you're here locally, the Florida Bar Association, you should know that the Florida Bar is watching you right now. All right. You know, as undergraduates, as people who are not applying to law school yet, your behavior now matters to them. So whatever it is you're into right now, that will probably end up on a bar application. Okay. Whether or not you got a speeding ticket, whether or not you paid your bills late, whether or not you got ticketed by parking services half a dozen times during a particular semester. You know, I've actually seen bar associations delay somebody's license because they thought they got too many parking tickets while they were in college. I mean, it has happened. Okay. So, but I think a lot of you, you know, as people who are thinking about going to law school, maybe don't know that, you know, you don't think you're going to be asked these questions if and when you do apply, but no, they're going to ask those questions. And so, you know, whatever it is that, you know, you can govern your behavior, knowing that, it's just important for you to know that those are some of the consequences that you may have to deal with later.
Yeah, so Dr. Fiesta, you mentioned the perspective of being aware of your life now, affecting your future life and your future career. So I want to ask the panel some questions related to your current practice. Once you began practicing, was there anything you wish you knew before starting your legal career?
Are you asking me or everybody?
If you'd like to take it, go by all means.
You know, both Andrew and I started our legal careers in the state attorney's office, which is like the I'm not going to call it the nursery for young lawyers. You are thrown in pretty quickly, and you're either sink or swim, at least in the times that we worked there. Now, we both worked at the state attorney's office under different circumstances a long, long time ago. Different people were supervising us, and I'm not going to suggest that they're any different now, but they probably won't subject a lot of young lawyers to what we were subjected to. I'm not going to call it abuse, but we weren't, depending on who your supervisors were, that kind of depended on how much help you got. And so, one of the things that you learned very, very quickly, if you weren't told this initially, is that there's a person that works really, really close to you who's not a lawyer that you need to make sure you stay on the good side of, and that's your legal assistant. And those people are usually people who've worked at the state attorney's office or your agency a lot longer than you. And so they know how to push the paper. They know exactly where your files go. They know exactly where they keep the files. They know all these little things that you don't as a brand new lawyer. And so taking cues from somebody who's not a lawyer is something that is not a natural act, but it is something that if you get good advice from the people around you, they tell you, you need to listen to your legal assistant because she's been here longer than you. She has more experience than you, or he has more experience than you. And so taking that advice from somebody who's not a lawyer is something that I'm not going to say it didn't happen, but if I didn't get that advice really, really early, it would have been a hard lesson to learn. That my first legal assistant, she's still on my Christmas card list. I mean, we grew up together more or less, at the state attorney's office. She ended up going to be a law enforcement officer eventually. And, she still lives in Florida and we still communicate, and, we're really good friends. And it's because she looked after me as a brand new lawyer. And so, those relationships that you make, really earlier in your career, hopefully they pan out to be very, very helpful people in the future. But definitely take good advice when you hear it. Seek out good advice when you can. Don't think that, and again, if you're just thrown in, sometimes that happens. We do learn by doing. That is one of the things that, as litigators on our feet, as Cindy said, that's what we do. That's what we spend most of our time in the courtroom. We're on our feet. We're talking to the judge. We're talking to defense counsel. We're talking to our witnesses. So that's what we do for the most part. But if you don't have somebody telling you move in this direction, move in that direction, it could be a very different experience.
I'd like to repackage what Dr. Fiesta is saying just a bit. It matters how you treat people as lawyers, as a law student, as students. And sometimes when we get into this practice, we kind of get the feeling ourselves, hey, I'm a lawyer. And so the point that I would make to you is, as Dr. Fiesta said, the people that work with you, alongside you, it could be your assistant, it could be a clerk, it could be a parking person, it could be the people that you run into. It matters how you treat them and how you relate to them. And it's that thing, again, that really sort of presses on us as professionals that have this special place in society to be the persons that are representative of the members of the Florida bar or the state bar or the federal bar. We're held to a higher standard of how and we relate to people and what we do. Today more than ever, we have these conversations about civility, and you can imagine why. But it does come back to the idea that everyone that you are interacting with is a person, and how you're relating to those people does wonders. How fast your case moves, how quickly you get into the door, how well you can get on the elevator when you've left your keys, or how you're treating people and how they perceive who you are as a lawyer and as a person does matter.
So on this same note, I think that don't forget that your client is dealing with probably a very difficult situation in their lives when they're having any sort of legal issue, whether there's money on the table and it's a contract, whether it's a family law issue. Certainly in criminal defense, you might be dealing with somebody's worst day. And I think that you have to think about how scary it is. They are trusting you a lot of times with some very significant part in their lives. And you cannot forget that aside from being a lawyer, you need to have you need to have compassion there for the situation that your client is in. And I think that, if I'm not mistaken, one of the most I guess complaints against lawyers is lack of communication. And so when you are communicating with your client, when you're giving them expectations of when is the next time you might be talking to them and why, what are you waiting on? And just that communication, that's so important, just to keep your clients happy. And again, if you were in their shoes, how would you want to be treated by your lawyer? Yeah,
so Ms. Mokar, you mentioned the timelines and making sure that people are content with how you're dealing with their case. I'd assume that creates a lot of stress, and I'm sure you all stay very busy. So for the whole panel, what does work-life balance look like for you in your career? Is there work-life balance?
You have to create it. You absolutely have to create it. I think this is a profession that many folks do not know how to create that. And there's many lawyers that do not have a work-life balance. They're in the office all day long, but you have to understand there's so many hours in a day. If you're spending that much time in the office, which sometimes it will require to, other things are not getting done, whether that is taking care of your family, whether that's taking care of your physical health, extremely important. And when you take care of yourself, you're going to perform better. Always. Your brain is rested. You have more energy. If you know things at home, the things that are important to you are taken care of, you're going to be able to have that space to be able to perform in a much higher level than if your life is in disarray. So you have to find that balance. No one's going to give it to you. In fact, I think just the opposite. People are going to be lined up to take away that balance from you, because there's going to be many people who will expect for you to be in the office. Some bosses, they think that because you're in an office 12 hours that you're somehow getting more work done. That's not always true. It's about how efficient you are, and you learn efficiency. You learn how to work and make the most of it. So you have to create that balance for yourself.
I think you're exactly right. The work-life balance is difficult. I'm a small law firm. It's me, my partner, we have an associate and 2 assistants. So it's overwhelming. It takes over a lot of your life. I'm on call all the time. I mean, I generally try not to answer my phone after 10, 11 o'clock, but I'm a criminal defense attorney. And like you said, when someone is arrested, especially someone who's never been in trouble before, it's a 5-alarm fire. The family doesn't know what to do. The person's never been in trouble before. No one's really sure what the process is. So there's been hundreds of times where we're fielding a call at 11 o'clock and I'll have to be in court at 9 o'clock for the person's initial appearance. And that strains your work-life balance, but it is incredibly important. You have to be able to take care of yourself. You have to make sure that your staff is being taken care of. You have to make sure that they're getting, the recognition that they need in order so they can all have a good work-life balance. I heard someone once tell me, and I think it's completely accurate, like, how do you know that you've made it or you're doing well? And they're like, because I get to go to like my kids' sporting events, or I get to go home to go to the gym, or something along those lines. That's important. It's important for you. It's important for your family, and it'll make you a better lawyer.
And depending on what you're doing, it will differ. But I think, again, what we've heard, it's important to figure out what works for you. And I'm in a large law firm, AmLaw 200 law firm. A lot of expectations for lawyers to perform relative to the partners. It could be the associates, the need to work together. It's pretty rigorous. And so I won't say that the rigor is going to go away, but I am saying if these are the choices that you're making relative to where you want to work and what you want to do, you should have some expectation that that's going to require you to, again, fit with the rigor, but also have the responsibility of knowing what it is you need to do to be healthy, and to do those things that you need to do with your family. Quality of life never becomes unimportant to us as lawyers. But this is a stressful profession. I mean, that's the bottom line. What we do, 90% of our time is solving and working with someone else's challenges or problems. That's what we're doing. And it could be a criminal defense, it could be a civil matter, but you're really, again, taking on folks, their challenges, and sometimes they're paying you lots of money for it, or again, the stakes are high. But it is important to be able to understand as an individual, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm healthy, mentally and emotionally and physically? Particularly for first-year lawyers, we have a lot of opportunities for making sure that they get out to the gym, they're taking care of themselves, because physically the rigors are there. And again, if I'm being long-winded about this, I'll just say it like this, that this is a stress-filled profession, and we have to take care of ourselves in it.
I will say that I did receive some really good advice some number of years ago, and I liked it. And I've paraphrased it over the years as riding the ebbs and flows of the workload, because you get used to a certain peak amount of performance and the constant nature of the calls and the workflow coming in. And then you think, okay, there's a week where things are much lighter, much lower, or there's a month if you're lucky. But the advice was to use that. That is some of the time. But if you go into this profession thinking that your week will be a 40-hour week, you may want to rethink exactly what you're going into. Yeah. This is not a 40-hour week. This is an ebb and a flow. Some of our weeks are very long. Some of our weeks, especially if we're lucky, are very short. But that is the nature of the ebb and the flow. So ride the wave as much as possible. And then there's time there for some of that professional development to occur in that ebb. You know, when things are a little bit lighter, you can self-develop, you can go to the gym. I can assure you, when I started practicing, nobody cared if I got to the gym or not as a first-year lawyer. So good for y'all. I'm really pleased. There was zero care for attorney mental health when I started practice. I don't know about anybody else, but I'm thrilled to hear AmLaw 200 firm talking about kicking first-year associates to the gym. Get to the gym. Nobody ever said that to me. I was not as healthy as I could have been, I assure you.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'd like to move into more asking more personalized questions, so more specific to your careers. So starting with our UCF alumna on the panel, could you walk us through your educational path, Ms. Mokar?
Sure. My educational background?
Yeah, because I also noticed you have a master's degree as well.
I always forget about that. Yeah, well.
One more piece of paper.
If you remember this educational path, of course,
yeah,
yes.
I somewhat remember it. It's been several years now. So after law school, I did go to George Washington University. I got my LM in international law. I knew I was going to go into the Air Force, but it was a matter of, by the time I got my bar results and the time that my class was starting, there was kind of this pretty big window, several months. And so I was like, what am I going to do? The job market was horrible at the time. 2009, a lot of folks in my law school class were getting their offers rescinded. So there wasn't a whole lot. And so I'm like, hey, you know what? I like international law. Maybe I can use this in the Air Force. And so I ended up doing a year, and it was great. I paid a whole lot of money. I think it doubled my student loans, which I regretted because I didn't think about it then. But having a year in DC, and I don't know, I think it's like every legal person's, to me, dream to just be like, especially if you've never lived there. Everything's amazing there, right? All the museums, the Capitol, everything that you get to go see. And so to go to school in DC also, the people that we were having come to the law school to talk, I was like, wow, all these people from government. It was pretty amazing. We even had the first lady at a commencement speech. That's who gave us our commencement speech. So at the time it was Michelle Obama. So it was really cool. We had DHS, Janet Napolitano, come and talk to our class. So it just, everybody in government who's there was coming. So that was pretty cool. So that's like a little. So I think that's the perk of going to school in DC. So that was
Okay.
cool.
So UCF, then master's.
No,
then
so
what?
it's interesting. Even though you get your LLM after law school.
Okay.
Or at the same time. Some people get it kind of, if I'm not mistaken, at the same time if you have like a tax program like you have. So it is an extension of your law, I guess,
Fantastic.
education.
Okay. So then where does the Air Force fit in that educational path?
Sure. So then right after I finished my LM, I went into the Air Force. I went to the officers training, learned how to put on the uniform, how to march, how to salute, all my other customs and courtesies, hierarchy of the military, just kind of like the basics. And then after that, how many weeks? It was 5 weeks. After that is when then you go to the JAG school. And so literally there is a school where they teach you all about military law and about all the different things that you're going to learn and different legal issues that can come about in a military context. And so we did that for 9 weeks, if I remember that right. So pretty intense. And then you go off to your bases and you're a first lieutenant and you're learning everything, again, about being in the military and also reading lots of regulations, reading all kinds of everything to figure out, okay, how do I give advice? And it goes from there. It was great experience going into the military.
Okay. So I mentioned before in the introduction, one of our panelists was involved in a documentary. So I'd like to ask you, Ms. Morkar, could you walk us through the Odessa project and almost maybe how your military legal experience influenced that?
So let me clarify. I was not in the documentary. My client was in the documentary. So one of these cases that I had as a federal defender. So we did have quite a bit of cases that were highly publicized in the Air Force with the military training instructor type cases. The news was following that carefully. And so, but again, you'll learn that as a federal worker, whether at both offices, we never talk to the media. We just say no comment and that's about it. But the one that you're talking about, it was a very fun case. And yes, I think the military and different aspects prepared me for that case. So my client was charged with a big cocaine conspiracy back in the 90s. He was being charged with trying to buy a submarine from the Cali cartel and import drugs into the United States. And so that was a case that he had from the 1990s. He became a fugitive. And many, many years later in 2015, he travels to Italy and he goes there for his son's wedding, but the government never forgets. So there's an Interpol warrant. So he gets extradited to the United States after like 2 years in Italy, and he makes it back. And our case was a marijuana case, but the government kept trying to introduce this documentary he did, in which he tells all about how he was buying this submarine. So very interesting, very difficult client, as you can imagine. I think he looked at me, said, "You're a nice young lady. How are you going to help me?" He had been used to hiring lawyers that charge a whole lot of money. So lots of big shot lawyers was what his experience had been. unfortunately for him, he had all his asset frozen. There was no money to hire a lawyer, and none of his friends came through to help him hire a lawyer. So he was stuck with me. So none of my advice before going to court ever made a difference. I was called by my first name many times. There was a lot of interactions there of, again, the dynamics, much older person, much more experienced in the criminal field than I was. And so, you do your job no matter what. You take it in stride. You remain respectful. And it was our very first hearing that he was like, afterwards we met and he was like, okay, we're best friends, because he saw what was done in the courtroom. And so he understood that I knew how to do my job, and, it went from there. So.
And for the students that are interested in maybe watching this documentary, could you tell us the name?
It's called Operation Odessa. I think Netflix still has it. Yes. So.
Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Mokar. I'd like to move to Dr. Fiesta. We've spoken a lot about almost the difficulty or the demand at the start of your legal careers. Could you expand on the start of your career at the state attorney's office and maybe the difficulty that was there?
Yeah, I think, I mean, like I said before, and I think even Miss Cook relayed this idea of how we were just treated differently back then. There's a stress now on mental health and making sure we're not, in an environment where I suppose that you're being ignored, or that, there's a lot of different policies that are in place now, I suppose, that help young lawyers, so they're not being just trampled upon either by their supervisors or by the system. But the office itself, back in the day, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because I stayed there all through that time, so you just sort of got used to the drumbeat of what it felt like to work in a government office. And working at the state attorney's office, I always used to compare it to working at the post office. The mail never stops, and neither do the cases that come from, people are always going to be committing crime, allegedly or not allegedly. So the public defender's office, the state attorney's office, it's a constant, like I said, it's a constant wave after wave after wave of cases that come in, and those have to be assigned, and there are never enough prosecutors or even public defenders to handle them. And so you're constantly doing what I would refer to as meatball surgery. All right. You're doing triage on your cases most of the time. In law school, we learn how to do trials from bang to bullets. I mean, from the beginning to the end, and you probably spend a semester preparing for a trial, right? And Andrew and all of us probably have experience working in the criminal field in one form or another. That is a fantasy world. I mean, you typically walk into a trial docket, if you're a county court prosecutor handling cases like DUIs, possessions, batteries, domestic violence cases, a lot of the misdemeanor cases, you will handle probably 150 to 350 cases a month. And on a normal daily trial docket, 25, 30 of those will be set for trial. And so are you supposed to write opening statements, cross-examinations, direct examinations, closing arguments, jury selection questions for all 30 of those cases? Probably not. And so there's not enough minutes in the day to do that kind of work on every single case. So as prosecutors, you learn where the triage needs to be. You find out which of those cases are probably the most serious ones, the oldest ones, the one your judge is going to focus on, the ones that you have witness problems, the ones that you focus on those cases, one by one, and you get ready the best you can. And then in court, you stand there and you hope that the case that you got ready for trial is the one you're going to be going to trial on. And so now every prosecutor is a little different. You have to feel subjectively comfortable enough with how much preparation you put in. And so are there prosecutors that leave at 5 o'clock in the evening? Sure. Are there prosecutors that leave at 10 o'clock in the evening? Yes. because again, they have a different feel for how prepared they are for that next day. And there's no rhyme or reason, for, whether or not this person has it right or that person has it right. But, when you walk into court and say that you're ready for trial, I mean, that's a professionalism thing. You are telling the court you are ready for trial. So you better not be faking it, because in a second there's a jury that's going to be walking through that door and you're going to be picking a jury on that case. So, but at the very beginning of your career, that's what you have to get used to. You have to get used to doing 9 different things at once. You're sending out discovery, you're reviewing cases, you're making charging decisions, you're going to trial, you're doing pretrial motions, you're calling witnesses for pretrial hearings, you're doing bond hearings, you're going to the jail, you're doing all of that within a 1-month period. There's a cycle: trial week, motion week, trial week, motion week. And so every month it's the same sort of cycle. And once you get the rhythm, that makes more sense. But as a brand new person handling all of those cases at the very same time, again, it's the people around you that you really look to for support. And you just hope you have a good group of people around you that you not just look for professional help, but for socializing. I mean, these people are become, your friends. They're in the trenches with you, your trial partners. And so those first several years at the state attorney's office, they were a lot of fun. Looking back on it now, couldn't believe I did it. I mean, I couldn't believe you go into court with that many cases at any given time, and you're telling the court you're ready for trial, knowing how much you prepared for it. I'm not sure if I would do that now, but it's something that was, I admit, it's something that I did, and it's something at the time it seemed like everybody else was doing. That's just how we got ready. And so, but nowadays, I think, depending on the structure of the office, you have a little bit more support. There's the caseloads are a little bit more manageable, we hope. But yeah, there are waves of work that occurs during the month, and you just sort of, like as Cook said, you have to ride the wave as it comes and it goes.
And winning matters, right?
No, never. No, not at all. And because winning, I mean, that's a good point. As prosecutors, justice takes, we were always told by our state attorney at the time, Lawson Lamar, who was the state attorney here in Orange and Osceola County for like 40 years before he left his office. But he would always tell us, a prosecutor's job is to seek justice. And it is that broad of a term because to seek justice means a lot of different things. It can mean dropping the case. It could mean looking for the highest sentence. But whatever it is, that's what your job is for that particular case. And so if justice demands we drop this case, then it's getting dropped. If justice demands we go to trial on it, we go to trial. So every case is going to be yet a different situation that you have to think about. And again, that's part of the fun. It feels repetitive, but every case is different. So it doesn't feel like you're doing the same thing over and over and over again.
And Dr. Fiesta, with your involvement here at UCF, you're the department chair of one of the chairs of the legal studies department.
I'm not the department chair.
Excuse me. You're the chair of moot court.
Correct.
Mock trial and Phi Delta Phi, correct?
I'm their faculty advisor.
Okay, apologies for that.
No,
Could you walk us through maybe how those organizations prepare students for a future law career?
Oh, wow.
In undergrad?
I don't know if any of the panelists were able to be on their competition teams at their law schools, but UCF, we do offer the same types of competition teams that are offered in law school. I mean, the moot court team, the mock trial team, these legal competition teams they exist in the law school, and sometimes at the law school level, they are going to be nationally ranked programs depending on where you go to law school. And so at the undergraduate level, we have those programs. We compete in the same types of competitions. They may be a little bit formatted differently, but as undergraduates, we give you that experience to help you make the decision. whether or not you want to go to law school, because these types of activities are time consuming, they require a commitment, and what we are trying to do to you as advocates, what we try to train you to be as advocates, that's the more important part than the result. I call them competition teams because they compete. What is important to know, however, and I tell the teams this, winning is not the goal of the program. The goal of the program is to learn, is to practice, is to be prepared. And it's from that preparation that not academic success, but competitive success flows. Mm-hmm. So though any winning that occurs because of your preparation, that's a byproduct, as far as the faculty advisor is concerned, as far as your head coach is concerned. I am never screaming at them, you need to win today. That's not my job to tell them they need to win. What is more important to me as the advisor is that they learn how to interact with a team member, how they interact with the court, because there's usually a judging panel of some sort that is judging you. The people who are judging you are attorneys, volunteers from the community. They could be actual judges that have volunteered their time to evaluate your performances. So they're going to be giving you critical advice on how you can do better. How do you react with that advice? Your commitment to practicing and learning the rules. And then again, all of the work that goes into even understanding the actual problem, right? The moot court problem, which is an appellate problem. You're reading 25, 30 federal cases on certain parts of the Constitution, the First Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Eighth Amendment. And so you have to be really into those cases to argue them to lawyers. And the lawyers are asking you questions and you're firing your answers back. That's what moot court is. Mock trial, you have to be prepared to do a trial. So you're preparing opening statements, you're preparing closing arguments, you're practicing cross-examinations, your witnesses are also learning their parts. Everybody has to be on paper. And so these skills are the things that you learn and compete at in law school. And so, being able to shred case law, break it down, learn what the courts are doing, how does that fit with the actual facts of the underlying problem, the analysis that goes into coming to those conclusions, being able to communicate those conclusions verbally as well as in written form. So all of those things are going to be things that you're going to end up doing in law school, and a lot of it. And so if you're lucky enough to compete at the undergraduate level, it'll really give you a bird's eye view into what law school might be like. And you don't want to find out that you don't want to be in law school when you're in law school. I mean, and unfortunately it happens. All the effort that you put into applying to law school and getting into law school, think about that. Think about all the sacrifices that you had to make just to get into law school. And then you get there and you make the decision, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Well, here at UCF, that should never happen because you have us to ask those questions. Ask me how many lawyers I talked to before I went to law school. 0. Now, would I suggest you ever do that in the future or in the present? No. I went to an undergraduate institution where all of my professors, most of them were academics. They were PhDs. They were people with master's degrees. They were people in education. I did not have a bunch of lawyers as my faculty members. I never talked to a lawyer ever. Like I said before, my parents are medical professionals. They're not lawyers. So I never talked to a lawyer until I got to law school. And I'm not saying that that's a good idea. It's definitely not a good idea, but definitely take advantage of events like this and the people that you can come into contact with that can advise you. Is this something you really want to do?
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Fiesta. So it sounds like moot court, mock trial are some venues that students could potentially check out.
Oh, without a
Great
doubt.
opportunities. Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Awesome.
I'm going to put in a plug for the UCF trial team.
Sweet.
So
By all
as part of
means.
UCF trial team, we I don't know when, how it's done now, but we used to practice every Friday night. That was like the only night that I guess there was no conflicts. And so we did that, and it was a great experience. Enjoyed it, learned a lot. In law school, I actually, when you say you booked a class in law school, like your trial advocacy class, I booked my trial advocacy class, and I credit what I had learned on the UCF trial team. Then we did the UCF trial team competition, and they have a big competition in school where they pick like the final 4 people. I was also part of the final 4, and I again credit all that to the experience and everything that I had learned while at UCF trial team. So big plug for UCF trial team. Good experience.
There you go. There you go. Great opportunities. Check them out. So yeah, I'd like to move to Mr. Moses now. How does your background coming from the state attorney's office, how does that impact your practice in criminal defense now?
I mean, it's kind of cliche to say I know I've done it on the other side, but it's true. I understand what it is that the prosecutor is looking for, the cases how many cases maybe they've had, what it is, what sort of issues to look for. I mean, it really, as Dr. Fiesta said, when you're a prosecutor, it's kind of trial by fire, but it's fantastic. It's a lot of work. It can be nerve-wracking, but you learn quickly on the job. It's kind of a trial by fire. You have to pick up on the issues real fast. When you're a prosecutor and a newbie and you're in county court and you've got your first motion to suppress for a DUI, there are incredible attorneys here that are on the other side, the defense attorneys, and you are going to get steamrolled the first couple times you do it. And you learn though, and you take that and you learn how to do it on the other side. It's, I know I've handled as a prosecutor hundreds of possession cases, so I understand what else am I going to look for. Were the officers, was there an improper stop? Where's there, did they get an improper confession? Was the search improper? What sort of motions need to be filed? And all of that is what I learned when I was a prosecutor. And yes, it's a lot. Yes, you should be spending much more time on each file, but you don't have that time, as Jason said. But you learn a lot very quickly, and it's been nothing but helpful for me as a criminal defense attorney. Not only on the legal issues, but also, I can tell my clients, okay, this is the sort of sentence you could possibly be looking at if we either lose a trial or if we have to negotiate a plea. You've seen it all. So you have an idea of this is appropriate, this is not appropriate. Let's look at your background. All of that comes into play, and you learn most of it when you're first starting off.
Awesome. Sounds like really impactful experience. So more of a philosophical question for you. How do you defend someone that you believe might be guilty? Maybe is.
I don't mean to be glib at it. Yes, there are people that are wrongfully accused. There are 100%. But it's important for anyone who's gone to law school, honestly, you believe in what it is that you've been taught. The Constitution says you're innocent until proven guilty. I absolutely 100% believe that every person that walks into my door or was arrested has a right to be represented competently, to make sure that the government did not intrude upon their rights. I'm not justifying my client's conduct. I mean, none of us who've done criminal defense work are justifying their conduct, whether it's the person who is, bringing kilos of cocaine through a submarine or other cases I've represented people who have been accused of pretty heinous sex crimes. I've represented people who have been accused of murder. Not justifying any of it, but they absolutely 100% have a right to be defended and to make sure the government can prove their case beyond to the exclusion of every reasonable doubt. And that's how that it doesn't matter whether they're guilty, not guilty, whether you think they're guilty, they have absolute rights, and you're there to defend them.
Thank you, Mr. Moses. So, Ms. Cook, we focused a lot on criminal defense and almost legal practice in the private sector as well. I'd like to focus a little bit on education law, and especially with your tenure here at UCF, how is education law different at such a large university like UCF?
Well, first of all, it's interesting. I have zero criminal law experience. It was the one thing I knew I didn't want to do. And I charted a path that allowed me to not do it. So good for me, I guess. But it is very interesting. And I do appreciate the experience that my colleagues had in either prosecution or defense really gave them that early edge in litigation. I do want to just make a little side note here. We don't really have a lot of transactional experience up here at the table, but there's a lot of other things going on in a legal career other than litigation. My job in education law, which I'm a labor and employment lawyer litigator by training. That's where I started. And I came to the university because they needed a labor and employment lawyer. And we don't really handle the litigation in-house for various reasons. But over time, it had to grow. Like my experience and my repertoire had to grow in order to cover the legal work that needs to get done at the university. So what is education law? Education law is basically the practice of law in service to an educational institution, whichever level that may be, K-12, state college, state university. It also encompasses some research institutions that are loosely associated or more directly associated with educational institutions. That doesn't really tell you a whole lot because I could be doing tax, I could be doing litigation, I could be reading a contract, I could be negotiating a contract, I could be doing labor law, I could be doing administrative law, I could be doing governance. And we do all those things in the setting of an education law office. So I don't know how helpful that was, but I definitely wanted to make that plug for being aware that there's so much more in law practice than the litigation side of things, which is fun and it's sexy and it's much more interesting and you get great stories. But there are also a lot of other things. I mean, there's intellectual property. We do that here. There's tech transfer, involves patents, commercialization of inventions that occur here at the university. We do that. So we've got a lot going on. I mean, I don't do the patent stuff, just to be clear. But if you happen to be a life sciences or science major, don't think you can't be a good and very busy lawyer. You can be, because I don't know if you realize, but most of those patent attorneys, they have a science background or computer science at least.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And throughout your time in the office of the general counsel, how have you seen UCF change as a university besides going to the 70,000 strong that we are now?
Yeah. So when I got here, we were at about 33,000, which seemed huge to me. I went to a private for undergrad and I went to a private for law school. So I wasn't in such a big setting. I think the big changes have come from, we were really still in 2002 and the early 2000s, I think, very focused on kind of a demographic that was not quite so committed to that collegiate college life. And that has really changed. So back then everybody would talk about UCF as a commuter school. I don't think we get that anymore. I think that we very much have a collegiate experience. We very much have a college campus with a full range of services. And I think it was there even in 2002, but I just think people kind of let go of that old UCF reputation. But there's been a lot of growth. I mean, a tremendous amount of growth. No downtown, no Lake Nona, no Rosen. When I got here, none of those. So, I've been part of working on all of those issues. We bond a lot of things. We borrow a lot of money. Downtown, we borrowed money to build. We have a bond for that. That's legal work. I'm just still making plugs for other areas of practice for those who care. But yeah, there's been a lot. We've done many big transactions here at the university, things that have been very interesting that you're sitting in this room, you're sitting as the beneficiary of a big transaction. It took borrowing money and getting the money sent down from the state in order to build this room. Because this room wasn't here just 10 years ago. Yeah,
wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Cook. So since we are approaching time and out of respect for your time, I'd like to ask if we could go another 15 minutes. I still have some questions to ask Mr. Calloway, and I know our students have some very great questions to ask as well. So if 15 minutes is okay with our panel? Okay, wonderful. So Mr. Calloway, in your eyes, what's the importance of functional diversity? You've written about this in some of your publications in law. And how can lawyers seek to achieve it in their practice?
Our history with social norms and culture really has evolved. And my experience tells me that our culture and the way we do business now and the way we perform as lawyers really is dependent on our ability to understand who our clients are and the environment that they're working in. And I'm speaking from the perspective of an operation of not just as a lawyer, but also as an associate or a partner in a law firm, where you are really trying to understand how best you can serve a client. And over time, we understand more and more now that our ability to solve problems and to create pathways for achieving our clients' objectives really depends on, again, the creativity and the diversity of thought, the diversity of experience, the diversity of skill sets, cultures. They matter. And we know, almost without saying it, sometimes if you can put, 10 people in the room who are basically the same culture, the same height, the same weight, and you give that set of folks a set of problems or an opportunity to create a solution for something versus another set where you've got people who are all have very different talents, very different aspirations, very different skills and backgrounds, you're more likely going to be in a position where the results that you can achieve come from that level of experience, from that level of folks who are bringing different ideas and different experiences to bear on a particular client solution. And that, again, is more important today than it ever has been. It used to be where our community was small. Maybe the folks that you were serving were from the same place that you were working. I work out of South Florida. I work in Fort Lauderdale and Miami. My firm is a statewide law firm. And the clients come from all over the world. They come from South America. They come from north in the United States. But we're operating in a global environment. And it's not just the clients that are global, but it is their companies, their business, their interests. All of those things matter when you are having to deal with an issue that may require the best and the brightest that you can bring. And we just know functionally today that you can't do that unless you have the kind of talent that, again, doesn't have a barrier. It's the competition for, and again, I keep saying this, but today now more than ever, in most marketplaces, the most important asset are the people who you have around you. It's not the technology, it's not the building, it's not the work, it's the human talent that you have around you. And part of that talent, how it is placed, is going to make a difference in how you're able to not only compete with whatever competitors you have, but also your ability to solve problems. And, we talk a lot about why we're lawyers and what we're doing. 90% of my time is spent working on solutions for clients who have a variety of needs, and my ability to meet those needs, again, I'm better off when I have that talent and those skill sets that doesn't have any real limits, but has some wonderful opportunities where we can bring those talents to bear on client objectives.
Absolutely. And you mentioned earlier on in the event that law is more than a business. I'd like to focus on the business aspect, and I'll open this up to Mr. Moses as well. Both you, Mr. Calloway, and you, Mr. Moses, are managing partners at your firms. Could you tell us just a little bit about the business aspect of law?
Well, again, this is also part of the evolution, and it used to be when you graduated law school, you went to work maybe with the law firm, and you were told, okay, you're an associate. All we need for you to do is to sit there, draft documents, do the research. We're not interested in your opinions. We want you to write the memorandums, give them to the partners, and we'll do the rest. Again, with this evolution, and I started again well over 10 years ago, the idea is as associates. So one thing I've learned in getting to where I am, where that happens to be, is understanding that relationships and my ability to be a partner, that climb for me as an associate, as a partner, and now an equity partner in my firm. How do I develop business? All of that is connected to, number one, my skill set as a lawyer. The first thing I have to always do is to make sure that I'm delivering the best, the highest quality legal service that I can do for a client. If I'm at the top of my game, then the next thing I want to do, again, is to be able to translate that into an area where people who know me, they trust me, they're going to bring their problems to me. They're going to bring their challenges to me. And that connection is what is needed. And so today I've got first year associates, got a second year associate now working, and a first year associate working directly under me. We go to a event. I put them in a room like this. They've got their business cards. I said, okay, everybody spread out. Go meet and talk to people. Because we understand that when people are talking and they are relating, that is the beginning of your ability to create those lasting relationships. We also tell our students and our associates, go out, get involved in your community. What's your passion? Mine was transportation, it was education, but what's your passion? In your community, there's something that you like doing. There's an organization that you can be a part of. And what happens when you're involved in these organizations, more times than not, if you're the lawyer, you're probably one of the few lawyers in that organization. And so now you're in a position where people who are non-lawyers, but they're relying on you. They know Callaway can talk. They know he can read. They know they can ask him a question. He's going to be able to give them an answer that perhaps they might not get from somewhere else. But I call it when you're working in the trenches with a not-for-profit or community organization, you're around other non-lawyers, but they are professionals. They could be doctors, they could be technicians, they could be engineers. These are people that you are, again, in the trenches with, and they take that experience with you. Callaway works. I know what I can get from him just because of that experience. And I'm saying those experiences are how you bring together your community work, your professional activism. All of that, again, is centered around just the one postulate that you carry with you every day, is that everybody I meet, everybody I'm working with, everyone I'm associating with is a potential client, but more important, they're a person. And if I treat them like a person, and part of my business approach is I rarely ask people, give me, give me, give me. I spend a lot of time working with people trying to understand, how can I help you? What is it that you like doing? How can I be important and do something that will help you? Doing that, again, you're conveying to people, it's not just about me. And building those relationships always translates into a business. It's not one for one per se. That person may walk away and they may have something to say about you, something comes up, you're gonna say, oh, you should probably call Callaway. And that's the nature of where business is. But we tell our young associates now, do it now, because after a time, you won't have to do it so much because you've been out there in the community. I looked up one day and again, I just realized I'm getting phone calls all the time. I'm talking to people all the time. And I realized it was because I had spent literally a decade or more of just working on relationships and understanding and that, again, high quality legal service, high quality lawyering, plus being a person that people know and trust,
Absolutely.
it's a recipe for success.
Absolutely. Mr. Moses, do you have anything to add about the business side of law?
You don't learn any of it in law school. You know, a little different than, you know, being your managing partner at Schutz, like you said, it's in 200, it's massive, it's a statewide firm. I'm a small law firm. When I left the state attorney's office, I left with someone else that I worked with at the state attorney's office in order to set up our firm. You all of a sudden become not only a lawyer, and that in the beginning you have no clients. So you are the chief marketer, you are the chief information, you are the chief of technology. You have to learn all of this. Accounting, how to balance, you know, your budget, how much to devote of your income to further marketing, to further, you know, new computers, new technology. How much are you paying for rent? It's all stuff that is mind-boggling because you had no clue. You're like, well, at the state attorney's office, you get to practice law, honestly. Yes, there's a zillion other things of witness coordination and making sure that you're, you know, everything is, your ducks in a row and you're on time and things like that. But for the most part, you're there to practice law. A lot of it, as Dr. Fiesta said, it might be meatball surgery, but you're there to practice law. When you go out on your own, if anyone chooses to do that, it's a whole different ballgame. But as Mr. Calloway said, absolutely, relationships matter. People that I will meet at different seminars, people that I'll meet at different bar events, they might refer me a client. Generally speaking, it's not people that I would want to associate, generally come to me, you know, that I'm hanging out with, want to come to me as a criminal defense attorney. Most of my, you know, friends, colleagues are not criminal defendants, thankfully. But I always tell people when they meet me, they're like, oh, what do you do? Criminal defense. It's like, I'm sure you'll never be in trouble, but everyone has that friend. So, and they all laugh, and it's a nice little one-liner, but it happens. I'll get phone calls. I'll get phone calls from people that I went to law school with, that they practice a different area of law, but I've kept up with them over the last 20 years. There'll be people that I was friends with in undergraduate that I keep up with. You know, you get a reputation, and hopefully a good reputation, and it carries with you, and people will want to send you clients, but it is work. You want to have a reputation, you want it to be good. And that is something that you guys should all carry with you. A lot of times when you're meeting someone, it's the first impression that matters, and your reputation carries with you forever. When you start off, if you are the person that, if you're in a big law firm and you're not getting your billables, or you're waiting, you know, if you're waiting on other people to do your work for you, you're going to have a bad reputation between your colleagues, and that's carried forward for the rest of your career. I'm not saying you can't turn it around, but it's more difficult. When I was a prosecutor, there were people that weren't prepared. Judges knew which attorneys weren't prepared. Judges know which attorneys are there to make good arguments. Their judges know they speak to each other. Even if you've never appeared before a judge, they know your reputation, especially if you're practicing in, you know, generally in the county where your office is. All the judges, even ones you've never practiced before, if you have a large motion that's coming up or a trial that's coming up, if they don't know you, they're going to ask somebody else. Your reputation matters, and you really only get a chance to make that once. And I think that's incredibly important as a young attorney, whether you're starting off in governmental work, transactional work, business work, litigation work. It's very important, and it's something to be mindful about, because what you say, how you carry yourself matters each time you're meeting somebody new.
Fantastic. Thank you. So I think the biggest thing to take away is the human-centered aspect of business in law, definitely. I know we're coming up on time yet again. If I may I ask just a few questions from the students? I'd love to get their perspectives and love to get your perspectives on their questions as well. I'll open this up to the panel. Is there anything you would have done differently in your legal career? All happy? Content? Awesome. Fantastic. No, from across the panel. Awesome.
It's not a no. It's just that, so would I have done things differently? Maybe. There are things that I think I probably should have done differently. Am I prepared to divulge those? No. Okay. I'll follow up with one more really quickly.
Let me just say though, on
Sure.
the question, again, I would say, if I know what I'm telling y'all now, if I knew it back then, I can imagine where I would be very different. Understanding the importance of connecting and being with people and those relationships is something, again, I say it now aloud because, again, if I knew that, if someone were telling me that then, I think it'd be a different story for me as well.
Okay, awesome. And then lastly, what is the most rewarding experience you've had in your career?
I met my wife in law school. I'm gonna tell this one. So, professionally, and I already talked about how every case is a little different, and whatever. I mean, the work is the work. If you're lucky enough, and this is a cliche, if you like what you do, you don't work. And so I said it to Andrew a couple times while we were mingling earlier tonight. I haven't had to work a day in my life, honestly. I mean, I've loved what I've done. I've had 2 careers so far. I've been a prosecutor for 15, now going on 20 years. I've been an educator. I've been a teacher for about the same amount of time, and I've loved both experiences. It's hard to pick one or the other, and so. But as far as the most rewarding part, of being a lawyer is it is those those personal connections. But I couldn't enjoy being a prosecutor and being a professor and an educator without having my wife with me. I mean, so having the support and having another lawyer as my support, we joke about how lawyers shouldn't marry lawyers. I mean, to me, that seems essential. I couldn't imagine not being married to a lawyer because we're both legally trained in litigation. And so any discussion that we have is a fair fight. We know my wife knows the rules just like I do. And, there's never it's never an unfair argument at any given time. And she finished law school a heck of a lot further than me. She was a lot higher ranked than me in law school. So, she's having her as a support for me. I mean, that's, and we support each other, those are important. And so rewardingly, I mean, in a rewarding way, is it rewarding to work with students? Absolutely. Is it rewarding? My time at the state attorney's office, yes, I feel it was rewarding, but nothing can come close to that personal support that I learned or that I acquired or that allowed me rather to meet my wife in law school. So I thought that was it's important to acknowledge that working for the government, you're not getting rich working for the government. All right. And if you're going to work for the government, you better have somebody that is willing to, get into those trenches with you and work your way out. So, and we've been fortunate. So again, it was very important for my career anyway, to have somebody like my wife, as a partner. So.
My wife is also a lawyer.
There you go.
And she's tough as nails, but she knows how to enjoy herself. And that has made a difference in my own practice where I'm kind of hard driving. She knows how to take vacations. She knows how to take it down a notch. And she literally has made a world of difference in my own professional development as it comes to relationships.
Wonderful. Okay, and with that, I will conclude the event. I'd like to thank our panelists for staying over time. Another round of applause. Yes, thank you all very much. Your perspectives were extremely valuable, and I hope our students found them very valuable as well. I'd like to give a big shout out to the Judicial Council, the Judicial Leadership Council, and the Judicial Outreach Committee and Student Government for really helping us with this event and really making this event a possibility. This has been fantastic. And yes, attendees, before you leave, if you'd like to just take a couple seconds to fill out the feedback form on the back of the panel, kind of let us know how we did with this event. We'd greatly appreciate that. And thank you again to our panelists. You've been wonderful. Thank you for being here. And with that, yeah, have a great night, and thank you all again.
Sure.